Good morning, everyone. I was a bit worried that the room would be quite empty by now, but it looks like there are still people who are interested in listening to the digitalization presentation. Well, I'm really pleased to be here with you, um, particularly because GIZ is one of the key investors in terms of promoting digitalization in African agriculture. So I was quite happy to come here and share our experience with you. So what I like to do this morning, time is fairly short, is to set the scene in terms of the digitalization for agriculture. We call it D4Ag ecosystem, and give you a very brief state of the art, where are things going, and with some recommendations for governments, for development partners, as well as for the private sector. So a lot of my presentation will be derived from a recent report that CTA launched in partnership with Dalberg Advisors on the state of digitalization for African agriculture. It's a very extensive study. I have the full report, and it's also online. So I hope, for more details, you can look into that. Well, in terms of looking at the infrastructure, the facilities, most of the services for rural Africa will be delivered through mobile phone. So it's currently, that's how it is, and it will continue to be that way. So according to GSMA, the data shows that by 2025, more than half of African populations will be subscribers to mobile services. And out of those, 60% will have smartphones, which means that you can develop much higher quality services, that provide better access to different kinds of information than you would get from a feature phone. So in terms of really reaching out to rural areas, the mobile will continue to be the main means of getting there. There are, as you know, a lot of new technologies that are emerging, and many of them are being tested and applied for agriculture as well in Africa. So the big thing is, of course, all these technologies that are coming out, blockchain, whether it's drones or satellite data, Internet of Things, and so on, are allowing us to gather huge amounts of data, and also the capacity to process that data. So there is a lot of interaction. If you have AI systems that can really analyze and process huge amounts of data in a very short time, providing real-time information at different levels of the users, whether it's for farmers, whether it's for agribusinesses, whether it's for policymakers. You can get all kinds of information, data coming from the farm, as well as weather data and all other kinds of data. So this provides real-time and also gives predictive capacity. And really the interesting thing is many of these emerging technologies are actually now being put in place in Africa. Although they are quite new even in the developed world, they are also being implemented. For example, if you look at blockchain, a lot of projects are taking place that allow us to show transparency across the value chain. So CTA has been supporting many of these kind of projects. Drones, for example, we have a whole network of drone operators that we're supporting in Africa. Young entrepreneurs who are providing services to farmers, surveying crops and farms and all kinds of things. So some of these technologies, also new, are actually being tested and used in Africa. So when you look at what we call the D4Ag ecosystem and its relationship in terms of broader, higher level impact at the smallholder farmer level, as well as at the higher, kind of societal impact on food and nutrition security, one has to, we identify two key components of this D4Ag ecosystem. So the first one is the D4Ag infrastructure, where we need digital data, in terms of farmers' profiles. It could be soils data, weather information. It could be all kinds of detailed information. And to be able to analyze that and use that, you of course have the hardware and the software and the drones and all kinds of software to analyze it. And then the second component is what we call use cases. So these are solutions that are addressing different kinds of use cases, whether it's extension and advisory services, it could be market linkages, it could be financial access, supply chain management, and macro intelligence. So in our study, we looked at the different solutions that are servicing different kinds of use cases and to see the impact of these use cases in terms of improving farm productivity, income for farmers, creating sustainability for smallholder producers, especially against climate change, and also how digitalization could facilitate inclusion of women and use throughout the value chain. So with all that, if it really effectively deployed, digitalization could be a game changer in terms of helping agricultural transformation and eventually bringing about a higher level impact. Of course, we are not saying that digitalization is a silver bullet. You'll need all the other factors. I think the presentation before identified some of the physical infrastructures that you need to make this possible, in terms of roads, in terms of storage facilities and markets and so on. So here what you see that there has been an extremely rapid growth of these digital solutions for agriculture in Africa at a rate of about 44% a year. So since 2012, we see tremendous growth, and many, 60% of the solutions have been developed in the last 3 years. Of course, one can raise the question of sustainability of these services. Unfortunately, many of them are donor-driven, so some of many of them may not last very long once the donor funding is withdrawn. We also see that through these solutions, 33 million farmers have been registered across sub-Saharan Africa. But it doesn't mean that all of these 33 million farmers are regular users of these digital services. We find that only 42% are actually on a regular basis using these services. Okay, so in terms of investment opportunities, still very, very small amount of investment in digital solutions in Africa. It's 2 to 7% of what's globally being invested in agri-tech startups. But the potential is quite huge. We estimate that there is up to 2.3 billion potential in this sector for private sector investment. So what you see here is the turnover in 2018 was about 127 million, and still the higher amount is coming from the donor funding, about 175 million. So still the private sector investment is very limited because many of the serious investors think that's still a high-risk area. So that's something that hopefully will change in the next couple of years. We also see quite significant regional differences in terms of who uses these technologies. The highest number of registered farmers are in East Africa, and really the most developed solutions are coming from East Africa. In West Africa, you see a huge number of solutions that are in the market, but the number of users are fairly limited. You also see, of course, within this, you don't see it here, but there is a significant country difference. It's about 10, 12 countries actually out of the 45 or so that we surveyed that are regularly, that have really well-developed entrepreneurship in this area. And Kenya is leading the way with a lot of private sector companies providing these services. And we also notice that out of all these, about 20 solutions provide 80% of the services for farmers. So it's about 15 or 20 that have more than 1 million users in their services. So the others are fairly small. So you could see that there's quite a significant regional difference. Here we see the users, for example, how the gender balance of users. Women are still a very small part of the users. Only 25% of registered farmers using the service are women. Well, part of it is related to the digital divide between men and women. We know that women are 15% less than men to own a mobile phone, and 41% less to have mobile internet than men. So there is already a digital divide, and of course, they have all other constraints in terms of using these services, the household responsibilities and so on. Whereas we see that the youth make about 71% of these registered farmers. So this is not very surprising, but one has to see that older farmers should also be encouraged or supported to make use of these services. There is some figure, as you know, that the average age of farmer is 55 to 60. Of course, there have been a lot of questions around the validity of that figure, but if that figure is true, then we can see that still, majority of the older farmers are not making use of these services. Next. Here we see some of the impact figures. We don't really have a detailed data on impact of these solutions, but from the limited data available, you could see that digital solutions can provide some significant impact in terms of income and productivity. So you could get up to 73% in terms of productivity and up to 37% in terms of income. And what we also see is that services that put together, different kinds of use cases, for example, extension services combined with market service access or combined with financial services have a much higher impact. For example, about 57% on income on average and 168% on productivity. And many of these are actually moving into what we call super platforms and bundled services. That's becoming more the trend, where a lot of these services are available through platforms. Next. So, well, again, I didn't really want to spend too much time talking about the challenges, but some of these recommendations are actually responding to the challenges that we face. So basically, for governments, we believe that the most significant contribution that governments could make is really building the D4Ag infrastructure in terms of building digital farmer profiles, digital soil maps, pest and disease surveillance, and all kinds of digital information that's absolutely critical to build on these services. What you see now is a lot of projects, they try to develop their own farmers' profiles, and somebody else comes and does the same thing. These are very expensive operations. So if we had it at a national level with a government and support from donors, and you could have that basis to build on all kinds of services. The human capital at all levels, digital literacy at the farmers level, at the policy level, the technical skills that you need to develop these services. This is one of the key constraints that many of the solution providers that we surveyed told us, that this is a major constraint in terms of getting skilled people, to work in this area. So skills is very, very, very critical. And also we noticed that many of the populations in remote areas, and as you have seen also women and other disadvantaged groups, they don't have enough access to this solution. So we believe that governments can make a special effort to reach out to underserved populations. And a big issue is data stewardship and data security. Especially farmers, they feel that they don't have ownership, the data is taken and used. Some people monetize the data, but it doesn't go to the farmer. So I've been doing a lot of work around that, supporting farmers' organization to develop data policy so that they can benefit, from the data being collected. Private sector, the big challenge is business model sustainability. Many of these solutions fail very quickly in a couple of years because they don't have sustainable business models. So we believe that they have to invest more in driving sustainable business models and innovations. Also funds for product, they should allocate more resources for product design and prototyping, because sometimes they just go to the market without fully understanding what's exactly needed and how that particular need can be filled. And of course, working in terms of public-private partnership. And finally, for the development cooperation, for the German development cooperation in particular. We believe that it's really important to support local skills development in this area, to really develop local skills and support especially incubators and accelerators, hackathons, all kinds of innovative approaches that help to generate a local ecosystem, and support in terms of providing skills. Also, the knowledge agenda, the data for ag knowledge agenda is quite sparse. As I said, we need a lot more to show the impact. What are the impact of these different innovations? What are the, the needs of farmers? How can it be addressed through this innovation? So there is a lot of knowledge-related work that can be made accessible to developers as well as to policy and so on. So development agencies can really help in this area. And also donors can help in terms of data infrastructure, especially developing the digital infrastructure in terms of soil maps and farmers' profiles and so on, and work in a much more coordinated way. What we see is different donors do different things. They don't really talk to each other, a lot of duplication. So one area is, you can really come together and at least do some of this basic infrastructure at the national level in a much more coordinated manner. So that's all I want to share with you. And as I said, we have a big report which has a lot of details. So you are welcome. It's on our website. I also have a few copies of the summary report. So if you really are interested in the details, we have all that. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Michael Hailu. Sorry for the few technical difficulties we had there. We waited for the digital presentation to have the technical difficulties so that we show the challenges, I guess. You are welcome to join Michael Hailu for further discussion on digitalization. He's going to be guided by Lisa right there, and you're going to Flamboyant as the room. So you're welcome to